this is another late night. Weird. Come on. Time of adjusting. Quit. Then I can't write with my right, so this is gonna be difficult, I guess. Let's see if this works. So, oh my gosh, I'm gonna burp a bunch. I just woke up. I don't know what this would be called, but potentially similar to the concept of evolution, or what is called evolution, which, I don't know, maybe this is evolution, and then it's kind of like you have the same concept with the idea of beings changing over time, but then it's as if it's applied or explained differently, and you kind of have that split. Excuse me. You kind of have that split with almost everything, or maybe they kind of, some things overlap, and it's a general understanding of simple nature. But it's as if you have two explanations for everything, and depending on where you look in society. And so you have people believing and feeling and interacting with their thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, or I guess maybe their thoughts, feelings, and actions. And if there is one true reality, but until we get to that state where we can kind of interact more definitively, or at least with them in a more beneficial or cohesive manner, in a state where we know it's not definitive, because right now it has to be definitive, or if it's not, it goes into chaos. If you could, take laws away and people just do what is necessary, you could say we were living in the same reality. Whereas if you take the restrictors off and our minds compete and go in different directions, like bottle rockets without the tails, that could be the sign that our virtual realities are kind of being maintained by a collective, not restriction, but in a way restriction, but a system that we're kind of growing into and applying into. And you could also say or those who aren't capable of maintaining that same level of cohesive interactivity, beneficial interactivity society, without laws or people with guns telling them what they can and can't do, to harm or disrupt others, then you could kind of define that, or reason that the decided upon world that maintains things is more of an illusion or construct, but only for those who don't know how to respect it. And then, as well, it doesn't change the fact or the possibility that you have one reality, and then everything that we can format that mentally, all of our ideas, all of our consciousness, whether we're right or wrong or capable or not, is a kind of virtual experience, or maybe a virtual, not a network. It's kind of like a virtual network within a system. It's kind of like the internet of life, if you think about it, or internet of biology. Cameras seem like black holes. Technological. And so imagine if all tech can be accessed from different points in time, because of the way the universe works, and we kind of, in a way, are like portals. But either way, but having that split from childhood of, oh, it could be like this, but then, oh, these people say it's like this, and oh, that's not real, it's all about this, and then it creates an obvious split. It creates at least, well, that in the opinionated sense that there's like a split, and so whatever, poor us. But logically, it creates the necessity for one of them to be virtual or all of them to be virtual. If you could fake a reality, basically. Which is, maybe that's the interesting point of all of this. But then the idea is what I'm talking about in terms of evolution, people or beings changing, whether there's just further adaptation and specialization in regards to evolution instead of complete mutation from one species to the next. Regardless. So then, this isn't going to work because I'm going to use this because I'm not going to wear out this tendon because I have a limited amount of time each time I use it. And I'd rather do other things. Don't get crazy ideas. And so, it's all about perception. I'm just going to use like kind of basic symbols. Uh, in a way, these could be maybe perceptual waves. And so, we're all kind of interacting here. You could say this is society. Oh my gosh, what is that? Okay, now it says SS. Whatever. Or it's like a lava lamp or something. I feel like I've drawn these all before. So as like everything's going forward, and it has to go forward. I have notes over there. It has to go forward to a certain point, and it will, and and it will do that on requirements as well as oh yeah, okay, sorry. A requirement for what we're capable of. We just naturally, it's kind of like what drives people forward. It's not like water going downhill, but in a way it is. But in the sense that, or maybe it's like if you have a set of marbles with different diameters, I guess, and you shake the jar, they'll organize themselves according to density. It's like our actions that we can't get away from. We can't get away from having thoughts, feelings, and then actions. We can just guide them differently. There's a spider. Oh my gosh, Mr. Mouse Spider, what are you doing? Okay, he's just watching, I guess. They're always driving forward reality, and reality can be our consciousness. Okay, that's not even close. Yeah, that's to see. Consciousness, or it's the same thing as that. How this one doesn't have the writing experience, and the tendon's actually twisted and wrapped for a surgery. So it's like partially backwards at one point. It's really weird. Or it's like inverted. It's upside down, basically. And okay, now I'm just making the same patterns over and over again. You have consciousness, which is your reality, or it could be society, which is really the same thing. It's just magnified, many magnitudes of order up. But then, what if it's all the same stuff? I don't know how I'm gonna draw that. And you have, maybe I can just wave this in the air, and you imagine I'm drawing things. That'd be cool. Advanced tech. I can just like think about what I want to be visualized, and then it'll be visualized. But that's already the tech, if you will. It's just, I don't know. It's just you gotta apply effort. But we don't want to apply effort. Just a button that does it for us. We'd all go brain dead. We'd all go retarded. It's like you don't want to have that power to like visualize in your mind. Why would you not want to have that? I mean, it'd be, I don't know. Maybe it would excite the ability and make it easier to imagine things if we had something projecting into our brain. But maybe it'd be like Google Maps or whatever, and you'd literally be like, what it is, they say something that you haven't seen on your brain internet computer for a while, and you're like, wait, what does that look like again? And just like when you use things over and over again, you forget how to do it, other way, and then realize like, how do I go to the bathroom? What do we do here? We need like automaton AI guidelines to make sure we don't walk into walls and stuff like The Sims. That would be going backwards. I mean, unless it was improved upon, which it was. And so or is that many magnitudes of order? Oh, and so then, if we're all doing the same thing, you have, I can't do that, it's gonna end up hurting. It's like you have the brain, here we go, another one of these cauliflower things. And if this is, everybody, hundreds of millions of people, and you have the majority of them doing kind of like the same patterns, maybe we'll just do that, but then you have a smaller portion doing so many things that it can't be described by the other portions. That's basically the general motion. Those are those kind of at the top of the graduated cylinder, although it's not whatever better than or whatever, but in a way it is, and it's wrong to think that it wouldn't be, or that's not a good thing, because that's like saying my feet need to smell the same as my lip and my face because I'm not, they're better for what? It's impossible. Everything is better or less than everything else. And to say otherwise is obviously a very delicate trick of the psychology to make people collapse their own boundaries and their own standards for self-respect, which we all have different ones, and we all have to stand by as long as we're not bringing harm to others, and we know we're being honest with ourselves, because then you're one part of that brain thing, that neuron, that's improving on yourself, instead of saying, well, there's this standard of just sitting on your ass and doing the most basic stuff. That's the best drawing I can do for that. Just whatever standardized normalization of ignorance by under disguise of making everyone appear smarter. I don't think that makes sense. Or I think that makes everyone dumber. Or it makes everyone appear, it doesn't make anything appear anything. It just makes everything look stupid and be stupid. Because it's not true. And it's, if anyone is saying, okay, it's true for me because it works, but then everyone is forced to do that, it's detracting from, it's not true, basically. And even if it's true for those people, they're tricked in thinking that's true for everybody, and it detracts away from this cohesive thing we're doing, which is, society. And so it's moving forward, and you have all these variables that you can use to define it. But it's really about perception. Let's see how I pull off that. It's all about perception, because I kind of want to open that concept up, because we know all of this throughout it, everything that's defining this huge map of society, detailed map, is always going to be wrapped up in perception. We take information technology, we take measurement systems, we take peer review, which is really just social interaction. You don't have to sit down and say, okay, how do we feel about this feeling and perception that we think things are like this? And then what does this mean? You just go out, and if somebody's causing trouble, it's obvious. Society itself is obvious. It's to the idea of, is it working? And who's helping or who's not helping and hurting it, whether they know it or not. And that's the importance. Having things, it sends you a little note, and it's like, okay, the next time we want you to do it. Like, that doesn't work, and it isn't the truth. It'll always be whatever you want. If you want the truth, society either works or it doesn't, and people either choose to knowingly, inherently detract from others, and therefore overall detract from our progress, but not, that's a used, manipulated term, our liberties, if you want to bend it back the other way, in the sense that our self-respect and our free will, and making things easier under the guise that it's going to make it better or make more people succeed, increases the likelihood that less people are going to be capable, and therefore more people are going to fail. And it's like a weird psychological trick. No one believes the difference anything else. We've been tricked since we were grown up, since we were children, into double-ended meanings, to the point where it became an act of acting like those that are involved with making those changes are actually trying to help, whether they just go, oh shucks, and there's this air of, it's this something that was grown, it's a feeling, it's like complacency with discontentment, and inefficiency or mediocrity, maybe. If that's the right pronunciation. If that's the right pronunciation. um, and it's like pronunciationception. Um, and so to the point where some people could be doing bad, knowingly changing things for the worst in order to disrupt that, to increase the likelihood of everybody kind of mucking around. To get that to work, the people who aren't able to see with that level of intelligence have to be emotionally, well, really, I guess they're not able to see with that level of emotional intelligence, because you would get the added intelligence perceiving the emotions of others. You wouldn't know what's wrong, but you would know something's there. So I guess they have the intelligence, but not the emotional intelligence, and so then they encourage those people, or maybe I said that backwards because I'm kind of like thinking of different people now. The main thing or the concept is when people go along with it, saying it's we want this to work, we want society to work, we want this department, this aspect, this program, institutional process, whatever it is. But you know how people are, you know how things go, you know how time is, society. Yeah, that could work, but sure, they're gonna toss that, and it's excuses, but it's by way of being tricked into allowing it for yourself through some type of emotional or intellectual disabling that also does come from some form of lack of self-esteem, and it's not from something else, or doesn't have to be. It's oftentimes from seeing things not working and then trying to see why, or influencing things, and somebody above you or closer to the BS acting like they know, acting like they're trying to help, and going, yeah, but it always turns out like that, oh well, and then kind of like sweeping under the rug and walking on. Not like anything was directly wrong, but just making excuses for the failures, if you will. But it's not failure. It's like misguided judgments in our own society, and the resulting loss of control over large amounts of population and time, where things kind of not don't work out, but where we've become accustomed to accepting more and more less smart, some would say depraved, or less efficient and less influential roles in society, literally as society itself. Society itself has been diminished within its own view, and that was made to kind of be tossed off, or just blown off like siblings arguing or something, which is a form of mental disorder if it's to a certain degree, and it's literally to the point where if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in, and the situation would be drastically different, to the point of an enslaved community being liberated by armed forces. Except we're enslaved, we're allowing ourselves to be enslaved, we're sustaining it, excuse me, we're maintaining it, and we don't know we're doing it. We're doing it because, or in that situation, because we think that's the right thing to do, in the sense that it's maybe not preferential to do that. Spider's moving. Why do you do this? Nice day. Don't move. Sorry. And it's a trick. It's a clever trick, to the point where those who are deep in rely on that. It's plausible deniability and plausible ignorance, to the point where we're allowing them to get away with it once we do that. And again, it's not us versus them or anything like that, but it's any aspect of our own ignorance, to the point of laziness, to people not making their bed and cleaning their room and stuff. I should speak. And I got excuses, 2 of them, but no, I was playing. And so I just wanted to say that, because that's a large portion of why it's perception. It's what we're calling okay. It's what we're calling right. It's what we're calling good enough, and we've been tricked to saying, that's not that bad. It's just okay. And society went downhill from there. Like, no BS. When we first were going, this is the other aspect of it, that it's like a slippery slope to the point where, that's okay, you can't blame them, they don't, whatever, blah blah blah, to the point where this and this, if you took him there, he'd just be like, and run through the wall, bust through the wall and go back in time. There would be no way to accept it. And then so those who are here but can't see that and go, that's a trick, don't do that. I don't even know how to connect to that, but if you took them, they're in ignorance, because if you took them to here and said, what do you think about that, if this is going to become like that later on, I don't know what I'm drawing here, that looks interesting, they'd flip out. And so if they're saying here, I hope that wasn't a spider, if they're saying here, no, it's a complacency thing, so something is missing from there to there, and you can take anyone back, because here is just as good as childhood for any soul as it is earlier times in the history of the planet or society, whatever disc. And so, okay, so what we're seeing now is a lot of things change, and they're changing rapidly. And we're seeing a lot of people who are used to doing that, if you will. They've been led. It's like a Pied Piper. They've been led to, maybe this will work, and I can learn a few weeks. Anyway, they're having a lot of people are having obvious not challenge. It's they're having a marathon, a research marathon, and that's fine. But the idea is, I almost want to have a thought experiment in what's possible, or what's. I'm staring at the spider, or just like crawled up to me. Must have felt the heat or something. Into what might be happening. And so everything is moving forward. If this is we're drawing the kind of world, the brain of society, the worldview, this is where it was in the sense that we thought it was here. This is where we thought it was. I don't know what kind of arrow that is. I swear that it's reversed, the tendon thing. So anyway, it's gonna be great to erase. And so it's as if you're looking at a kind of a dial that you can move one way or another. Now I see what the drawing is. That's weird. They all kind of turn out like that. Those are very geometric shapes that match a universal form. Just try it. To the point where when pressure goes on, funny matches, we end up, this slides over and we end up moving. It's like an accelerator throttle for change. And again, I'm not saying that people then mutate, radioactive volcanoes erupt and this, that, and the other. If that happens, we'll probably just melt. Maybe unless it's a thought volcano, if you will, that goes up, and then so on, plasma. Then it's our ideas that are bursting. And then we have to be grounded. I don't know why one leg has an early protrusion. I was trying to make it connect with that, I guess. I don't know, maybe the legs go like that. It's weird. It's like the vortex thing. And so, and then so, I'm just gonna run through this, but the other thing is maybe by lowering that and saying, yeah, just whatever, and increasing the acceptance of lack of pressure, or lack of push and catalyst to move forward, maybe it altered time in that possibility. It altered our perception, and maybe, come on, somewhere in here, in this, like, whatever this thing is, just construct a wire bridge tension point of concept here. Our perception kind of quantum shifts, if you will, from a possibility center, or a center of possibilities, and we're not actually going anywhere, but there are kind of different phases of the world, just like different phases of a human, just like different phases of plant growth or any type of system. He's on the move. And it's as if they already, I swear he's just going to jump on me as soon as he gets overhead. And so they don't move, but our perception goes from one to the next. And so then maybe there's a kind of synchronous time where everything's more or less moving along the same trajectory, and everyone has a kind of given amount of reasonable time to expand their perception. I'll leave that to a point where they see the whole thing, if you will, or they see the other aspects of it. And we end up doing that together, and it's like this thing is a giant brain or soul or something like that. And then to the point where those who don't kind of decay in time, if you will, and you get these, the result is as if time is a kind of mechanism and society's kind of inside of it, and there's no motion, but it's as if it's rotating, and there's like beads of light that seemingly rotate, but the light jumps depending on how you view through it, or how the light is emanating through it. And you have the perception of those going back in time, or down in advancement, intelligence, compassion, and those going up. And at a certain point, the whole thing, that might be maybe a mirror system that was added, and there's really only two forms of advancement which were degraded because of manipulation to create that false system, literally out of the, okay, sure, whatever, yeah, okay, and some people devolved in the sense, but that wouldn't, maybe past the point where people can do that, and there's this kind of positive negative feedback that could potentially society could destroy itself under its own weight. That system maybe is like asynchronous in that sense, or maybe it's a synchronous symmetry, but it's the question is, without that pressure to make some people accept stupidity and some people go, that's not right, and move forward, would people still move forward? It's the kind of like this age-old thing of whether the catalyst for darkness is needed, or for intelligence at that point as darkness. And maybe once we get to the point where we can see what we're doing here, our true intelligence, we see everything, but as it's beneficial for us, you could see in the dark, or there is no dark at that point, it's removed. And at that point, we don't require suffering to catalyze new awareness and intelligence, and possibly in this place we never did because of, say, a giant experiment gone wrong, or an assault on the human race to push them back forcefully, in that way kind of sending their souls into a form of regression, which potentially created the perception of, for some, being in the future and for some being in the past. And so the idea is, if everything's changing now and you have people going, wow, I never knew that, that's crazy, but it makes sense. And from their perspective, or for those who don't move, they're looking at people basically go off into an area they can't properly define, interacting in a way that they can't properly define, at least not yet. And then you have those who are kind of staying here, and they say, no, there's no chance. That's not possible. I would know. They would have told us, etc. And from those people who moved on, they're sitting right here in the center. They haven't gone anywhere. Everybody's waking up, and that's normal. From their perspective, those people are kind of dissolving in their ability to interact in that world. And I guess these should diminish just like that one does. Now that makes sense. Wow, that's great size disparity. To the point where it's as if they're out of view, but it's like a dimensional lensing view of simply our intelligence and what is going to become that which becomes more, and that which does so consistently, and therefore becomes an aspect of society. Once we get to a point here, for instance, you can never go back to where if you were here, this would be. It would be like not knowing how to put the shapes in the shaped holes. You know, having epoxia, or I think this was called epoxia. Gosh, gotta get the spider. And so, the idea is by perception changing. I don't know why that makes me mad. I can't close that in properly. We have this variation system. So the other idea, or the final part of that, is basically that what if, I can do that, what if the energy is flowing here and flowing there, giving kind of this electronic scalar vibration, activating, exciting the photon to the point where some people in quantum potential form in some other way, because in this concept everyone is there, so this is basically like a mega supercomputer, but it's also measuring the drive of people, not just their brain waves or desires or this, that. Who's going to get all their organs in a state that ends up here, not just their mind, their body, or their emotions, and get real high and happy on emotions and so on, but everything together. Because then you're there. If just a part of you is capable of managing a part of what you're supposed to manage, you don't actually go anywhere, and that's part of this. And so everybody who's like, yeah, but I did this and I did that, it means nothing. And it's literally because you really don't have to do anything. You don't have to do that. It's about seeing what's really happening and not being moved by what's not happening, and engaging with it, and engaging inside of it, and spending your time in it as if it's, well, no, yep, there's gone. As if it's going to produce the same fruits, because it won't. So ultimately, and the spiritual fruit thing is far removed from us, because at any point if you can say, yeah, this is it, I'm doing it because of this one thing, it's not guaranteed, because there is no one thing. Which sounds paradoxical, but we're really, we just don't know. We don't have a readout that says you have to do this, this, and this, and you'll be good, right as rain. You can go on and do whatever is going to happen next. It's like, just be strong enough to handle whatever might happen. That sounds like war. Like you're preparing. We don't really know what's gonna, but it's just because we're more ignorant in this sense, where things have been hidden from us, and so we're seeing what we're looking at without actually seeing it. We're kind of conceptualizing it without actually knowing. But in that sense, what if this is like not a beam system, but it's just energy waves, just waves of push, and they move effortlessly through this system, and then they combine here, and whatever the overage is goes this way in time, or in perception, and the other go that way. And so the idea is, what if it's a perpetual hyper-consciousness device, consciousness system, and it's just printed, and somebody just goes and knocks this one way or the other, and from there it goes all around. It goes all around, and creates this kind of squeezing accordion, vacuum vortex transfer of all things that could be, which is basically knowledge, because this system is going to be change, and the highest degree of change right now is through our brains, or at least our mind, souls. And so at that point, what basically your thoughts, feelings, and actions are going to define what direction the change goes in, whether you have information, or you have, physical resources, or you have, you're really tall or something. Either way, no one thing will do it, because all of those things are part of the system in itself. So that system is just going to smush everything together until it gets something new. And once we've gotten to the point where all that's maximized, because you can basically do whatever you want at this point, only the most refined sense of change will still, after all of this has been set, like this is sand, you got one of them pendulums, and it's made every possible pattern it could make by swinging it naturally through all the frequencies and vibrations. Only the super, super high, intense, complicated, vibratory and frequencies that would require a very delicate medium A very consistent and careful application to depict would be that which exists in the later periods that are still capable of activating or mobilizing this system. And you could say, in that sense, at the later period, only using your free will to generate that type of change would be that which is actually under your free will, because everything else would be just part of the same patterns. And so how do you create new patterns? And at that point, what is the new pattern that's being created if everything else is just a component that was previously added upon itself from the last section of the pendulum moving back and forth? How could you create true change if it's all already been done before? And so in that sense, it's just change added up by somebody starting the pendulum swinging back and forth, and then it has to take its own its self-awareness begins to feed back into itself, and now the change is beyond that which came when it first started up. So it's like a ingenuity system, if you will. But the idea is, what if it's perceptual? And so we have a planet, or what looks like that, and it's defined as that, whether it's round or maybe it looks like this. And that's the part you can't see. Or maybe it's like that. And everything happening is just looks like a blur unless you broke down all the magnetic interactions and so on. And we have animals, or whatever you want to call all the stuff that's going on here. What if this system works to describe what we kind of find ourselves in the sense that there are some here who went they accepted change and the truth. They accepted the truth, not just change. But they accepted the truth to guide the change, accurately to the best of their ability, honing their free will to the point where we think we are right now, to them is, again, like the shapes and the shaped holes things, it's exceedingly limited, and from any reasonable person's perspective, it would be stupid. You have to be stupid to see things that way. And in the sense, there are people here who look at the reality of what could be happening, and from their perspective, it's so impossible that they think it's stupid. They have an inverted sense of reality that they think it could be, and maybe that is just a inversion of, well, we don't care, we like it like that. And it just, at that point, it's not stupid, it's just which dimensional way is the species going to shape itself. And in that sense, it could be some people here that don't actually come from there, and they could never have. So they're playing dumb at that point, and they really want to say, we like this because that's what our species does. But regardless, because I don't really believe in too much stuff. And so, in that sense, this is like a placeholder. It's almost like zero. Where we think we all are is a system that exists as a virtual construct in our mind. But when you combine them, or when you look through the population and how they're interacting, what if this dynamic could define how what we call the planet became what it is, maybe even in the way that it's populated. And so then the other thing was that, say you view it like a tube, you got that there, and you got this like, wow, come on now, this lensing system fades out, and so it's kind of like a gradient. Sorry, then I scribble it up. And so, if it's like a GIF, a moving image, and you're going to see something here, and then they're going to flow out this way or that way, and what if at first, okay, so this is so hard to do with not being able to quickly kind of sketch. If you see people going this way, and they become higher intelligence, and they exist in a society from their perspective that exists right here, but say it's on another tier, okay, it's like it's up or down, and you just get a shift of these over and over, and that they don't mutate, but you get different, if you will, different classified, a different fullness of the entity that people are becoming. And so they were always what they are. Nobody's changing into anything. It's actually backwards that they are what they are, and they're kind of, we're coming here to look human, or at least maybe some people pretended, or something like that. And so we get this idea of evolution when actually they're just devolving or mutating back into previous form that they go on a clock mutating in. And so if you have kind of soul pressure pushing in this way and soul pressure pushing in this way, wouldn't it be like the universe itself is a kind of soul or perceptual accordion that pushes in, applies pressure and catalysts to your mind, and then people squeeze out as bioemissions or souls perceptually, like LED lights moving around a sign or something. And this, it doesn't populate, realities or dimensions. It's like, it's kind of like taking a movie or an art piece and beaming it with lasers that intersect, and then off of it you get smaller cartoons and movies on the other end. Like, this is a mind being beamed with the pressure of some type of collective mind or individuated mind system, and out of that you get more minds in unison, but also in separation and not division, but individuation, moving across kind of a plane of realm dynamics or a system, just like perceptuals, like perceptual marbles being shaken in a jar of different sizes and densities to organize them according to that. And in that sense, it's as if, kind of metaphoric, I'm just saying, reality is squeezing us out, or it's like a crystal, and that is pressure is being applied, and out of it you're getting a Piezo. Why do I say it that way? Piezo, yeah, I think. I can't tell. I'm trying to say something that doesn't even make English sense or whatever. Piezoelectric soul force that animates outward, and we don't know when that's to that or compared. It's seamlessly and effortlessly kind of dials rotating and dialing in to create a huge system that you could even say, but it doesn't, I don't know, maybe it goes up and down, but regardless, change is going in one direction. People see it in different directions because of inversions. So maybe that's a function, maybe a quantum function of the universe to generate what we call different species. But that possibly could be a kind of entropic feedback effect, because maybe some people lied, or maybe that's just how certain people are, and it's a lie that is an effect, and that is not the way things are for certain people or certain species or something. And where we see lower evolved or lesser evolved, it's actually a devolution and a mutation out of a kind of divine unison, or a collective, compassionate, high intelligent society that everything belonged to, which is a kind of devastating way to look at things, if you will, but it's better than some of the myths out there. I don't know if that made sense. I mean, some of it must have, but sorry, it's like 3 something more. Thank you.